Going on, everybody? What is going on? The Catch fam. Hope you guys are doing phenomenal today, man. Hope you guys are having a great start to the week. Hope week 12 was fantastic for you guys. We're hopping into a live segment for week 13's waiver wire. So, if you guys do not know, I am at the beach, so my setup is completely different. Not in my normal setup whatsoever. So, apologize for any lower quality action that you guys are getting today. But you guys know I can't miss my weekly fantasy hangouts with you guys. So, this week's schedule is going to be a little bit crazy. If you guys aren't already part of the Discord channel, make sure you guys join the Discord. Link is in the description down below. Make sure to follow us on Instagram. Those are two places where you guys will get additional updates like when I'm at the beach and my schedule's all off and I'm not doing pre-recorded videos. I'm just running live streams for the week. So we're going to hop in to some waiver wire ads for week 13. Week 12, a good week of football. Some really bad games, but ultimately a good week of football. So we'll kind of take some fantasy Q&A here at the end. And before that, we're going to hop into our week 13 waiver wire ads. Excuse me. Not really like the best week for waiver wire ads, but we got what we got. We got some excitement. So we got some exciting things. So let me see here. I'm trying to get set up here. I apologize, guys. And we're going to hop into it. So hit that like button on the way in, of course. Hit that subscribe button if you are new to the channel. And hop in the live chat. Let me know what's popping, guys. Let me know what you guys need. And I think I should be able to get everything set up in about 3 seconds. All right, here we go. Who's up in the chat? Let's see what's popping. Oh, my gosh. We got Derek in the house. What's good, bro? How are you doing? Guys, please let me know since I'm not in my regular setup and everything, and it's a little crazy. Let me know if there's any like technical difficulties that I need to fix or anything. Let me know if the audio sounds good. All that good stuff. All right. We're going to get started in just a second here. Should have everything good to go now. All right, we got J-Dubs in the house. What's good, bro? Good to see you guys. I appreciate you guys coming out. Like I said, I'm going to run through some fantasy Q&A and catch up with you guys at the end of the stream. But we'll go ahead and we'll start things off by hopping into our waiver wire ads. I will warn you guys, like I said, it's not the best week for waiver wire additions, but it's not. I mean, we've seen worse, I think. There's some interesting options. Some of these guys depend on injuries and everything. So, nonetheless, let's get into our week 13 waiver wire ads. All right. So, first up on the list, we've got JaMycal Hasty of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, Travis Etienne did leave the game with a foot injury. It is worth noting it's not the same foot that he injured last year. So, Etienne had just 2 carries. That left JaMycal Hasty as the RB2. He finished with 12 total touches on the ground, 5 targets, 5 receptions, just 28 rushing yards, right? But at the end of the day, 67 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown that left him with 20.5 fantasy points. So he's just 3% rostered at the moment, according to the Sleeper app. So there's a couple constituencies here, right? I think Etienne's got a pretty solid shot to miss week 13. I don't think they're going to want to risk anything with that injury. So, that's the good news. The bad news is Darrell Henderson's got picked up last week by the Jacksonville Jaguars after he was cut from the Rams. So Henderson could be a large factor here as well. Potentially. We don't know. But Hasty played really well, and I think the upside that JaMycal Hasty brings is the fact that he can get it done through the air, right? So even if Henderson is getting touches, obviously Hasty made the bank, made his money with the receiving work that he got on Sunday. So I do think that Hasty is worth an addition, especially in full PPR leagues. So Hasty, like I said, Henderson could be involved here. We need to pay attention to the ETN injury, but ultimately definitely worth a look. Definitely worth an addition at this point in the year when we're just scrounging the waiver wire for the running back position, as we'll really talk about on the next slide. I do think he's worth taking a look at the end of the day. But just keep in mind, I said, there's kind of some asterisks here, kind of a contingency overall in terms of we don't exactly know for sure that ETN is going to miss next week. I think he's going to miss next week, but we'll have to pay attention to it and everything. And Darrell Henderson's on this team as well. So we'll kind of see what happens. All right. So Hasty's number one. And we always want to start with the running back position. Like, what value can we get from the running back position as we approach the week? And right now you got JaMycal Hasty. Then we got Zonovan Knight for the Jets. 0% rostered at the moment. We really need to just take a look at the Jets backfield as a whole because, A, Michael Carter likely going to miss week 13. I mean, I'm just calling that myself. I don't know that for sure, but he did suffer a sprained ankle. I mean, these athletes are amazing. You never know what's going to happen the following week, but I think he's likely to miss the following week. Okay. James Robinson missed week 12, but that doesn't mean he's going to be out in week 13. So this is another sticky situation. But before we kind of break that down, let's just look at what Zonovan Knight and Ty Johnson did in week 12, right? I was excited to see Ty Johnson. I swear Ty Johnson just comes out of nowhere every fantasy season and has like a couple relevant games. So, but let's talk about Zonovan Knight, a guy you've never heard of before in your life before yesterday, right? 13.3 fantasy points against the Chicago Bears, 14 touches on the ground, 69 yards on the ground, 3 receptions, 3 targets. So he really operated as the RB1 with Carter out and James Robinson out. Ty Johnson had 5 touches, really made the most out of him, 62 yards on the ground. It's an average of 12.4 yards per carry, a touchdown, 1 reception. So, listen, Knight definitely out-touched Johnson, but Johnson showed why he always creeps into the fantasy season at some point, like I was saying. So, I still think if we're going to pick one over the other, it's probably going to be Zonovan Knight because he got the bulk of the touches, right? So, but like I said, we got to kind of look at this, right? James Robinson will probably be back in week 13. He was a scratch for week 12. So this is kind of tough to read. On top of that, Chicago does not have a great defense. We know that, right? And they played very, very poorly in the rain yesterday. Sorry, J-Dubs. I know you're out there in the chat. Minnesota has not played well defensively. Like, they're giving up a lot of points. They're allowing for good offensive game scripts from a fantasy perspective. That's who the Jets play in week 13. So I still think there's somebody to go after here. I'd probably roll the dice on Zonovan Knight, like I said, because he got the most touches. But I'm a little spooked here because, A, like I said, I think Michael Carter will be out, but we're not entirely sure. And then we don't know James Robinson's status for week 13. And then Johnson still played well. So a lot of people are saying go out and get Zonovan Knight. Like right now, he's not rostered in any league ever. But I just want to be a little bit wary of that. Like, I don't know if we can count on him getting you double digits again. So, because he only had 3 targets and 3 receptions at the end of the day. So it's not like he did a crazy amount of work in the passing game either. So I think that there's some value here. And, we're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel at this point in the season. But I just be a little bit hesitant here. Like the Bears played awful. I do think that the Vikings have been struggling defensively, but they're still much better than the Bears. But I will say, like, we're going to talk about the Vikings defense throughout this stream because they just gave up a massive amount of yardage and points to the Patriots in week 12, right? So I don't know how scared I am of them when Mac Jones had like a career day against them. But nonetheless, there's your Jets running back breakdown. It's a little crazy, but that's what we got there. All right. Let's move on to Kyron Williams, a running back who I have been kind of staying away from all season long. You guys know that. I got a lot of questions about Kyron Williams throughout the season, and he hasn't necessarily been a player I've really encouraged you guys to go after because this backfield has been so incredibly up and down, right? But there's a couple things I want to take a look at here. And I would take a look at Cam Akers as well. Obviously, this Rams offense is very different than it was a couple weeks ago and much drastically different than it was last year. I don't quite think that we're going to see Matthew Stafford or Cooper Kupp back on the field this year. But regardless, what we want to look at here, right, is Kyron Williams got the most touches overall in week 12. Cam Akers finished with just 8 touches on the ground, 37 yards on the ground, so less volume overall, but he had 14 touches the week before. And in week 12, Kyron Williams had 11 touches on the ground, 3 targets, 3 receptions. So the issue is Sean McVay really likes to flip-flop at the running back position. So I'll go with Kyron Williams as the hot hand at the moment, but don't be surprised if Akers sees more involvement next week. But Kyron Williams sits at 44% rostered, so he makes the video because he's more likely, to be a waiver wire ad for you guys, where Cam Akers sits at 64% roster. Here's what I want to get to, though. In the next coming weeks, right, the Rams will face Seattle and Las Vegas in the next 2 weeks. Both of those teams are in the bottom 6 against the running back position. So I do think that there's some value here, especially, like I said, when we're scraping the bottom of the barrel. In Week 15, they faced Green Bay, who I didn't initially put, on the slide and everything, but Green Bay just got torched by the Eagles on the ground. I mean, Jalen Hurts, I get that he's lining up at the quarterback position. I mean, he had 100 rushing yards in the first quarter, and then Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell looked perfectly fine out there as well. The Rams, the Eagles, no, they're on drastically different ends of the spectrum offensively, but these next 3 matchups are very good is the point I'm getting to. Then they face Denver in Week 16, not a good matchup there, but they face the Chargers in the bottom 5 against the running back position in Week 17. So lots of good matchups for the Rams running backs coming up in the next coming week. I mean, to finish out the fantasy season for majority of you guys who play through Week 17, like 95% of you guys do. And then even in Week 18, they play Seattle again, so another good matchup if you do play through Week 18. So these guys do have value, and the volume is good enough that even on a bad offense, they should get the opportunities against bad defenses against the run that they're going to give you some sort of value. So as we continue to scrape the bottom of the barrel, I think both of those running backs on the Rams are worth a roster spot and a desperate start if you need them. All right, let's move right along. One last running back for you guys. I got Gus the Bus himself. I kind of saved him for last because he's probably the more attractive running back. But what I do want to point out is, you guys know, I always have trust issues when it comes to the running backs for the Baltimore Ravens. I just don't trust this backfield at all. But we have to note that Gus Edwards, now back and fully healthy, led the Ravens backfield. I told you guys last week, I don't think I trust Kenyon Drake, who just had 2 touches, 0.2 fantasy points. Gus Edwards, this was another game, right? I don't know what's going on with this Ravens offense, but they were in a game where they're forced to throw the football. Nonetheless, Gus Edwards still got 16 touches on the ground, 52 rushing yards, and a touchdown. So he sits at 60% rostered according to the Sleeper app, but I have seen on different apps out there where he's rostered a little bit less. And it depends on the size of your league. So I think moving forward, even though he's got 2 tough matchups coming up with Denver and Pittsburgh, he finishes out the year with Cleveland, Atlanta, and Pittsburgh. So if Gus Edwards is truly the lead back for the first 2 games of the fantasy playoffs, he gets Cleveland and Atlanta. Very, very favorable matchups. He's worth rostering just for that reason. So go check your league. I mean, Gus Edwards is a player who got dropped in a lot of leagues going into, Week 12. I mean, he had the bye week in Week 10. He was out in Weeks 9 and 11, got injured in Week 8. So keep an eye. If Gus Edwards is out there, he's probably worth the addition. All right, let's move along. Let's move on to some wide receivers. We're going to start things with Zay Jones, a receiver who was rostered in a lot of leagues to kind of start the year and then became very, very inconsistent and got dropped in a lot of leagues. Do I still think he holds some inconsistency? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I still think that this Jaguars team, especially if they're going to miss Travis Etienne for a little bit of time, is going to be throwing the football more than less. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Or more than they have before. And they're going to find themselves. They're just a team that needs to throw the football. I mean, look at the beginning of this game, right? Trevor Lawrence was on pace for like 5 fantasy points. Then the game script forced Trevor Lawrence to throw the football, and he did so with success and finished with like 24 fantasy points. But moving on to Zay Jones, right? 27.5 fantasy points in Week 12, a season high for him. His next highest total was Week 3 against the Chargers at 24.5 fantasy points. But nonetheless, 14 targets, 11 receptions, 145 receiving yards. He sits at 38% roster, dependent on your league. Depending on your league, could be anywhere. But regardless, we've got him around that 37-38% range. He gets Detroit in week 13, Tennessee in week 14, two very favorable matchups coming up. Faces Dallas in week 15, then the Jets, not as great. Then Houston doesn't finish out the year as strongly, but I do believe that in all those games, the Jaguars will be playing from behind, which should benefit Zay Jones. So definitely worth the addition, full PPR. If you're looking for a flex receiver, I think that Zay Jones is definitely an option for you guys. All right. Next up, we got to talk about some more New York Football Jets. Today, we got Elijah Moore. Not a crazy game in terms of volume here, but we're going to talk about the Jets offense a little bit throughout today's stream because the Jets look good. They played a very, very, very bad Bears football team. Once again, sorry, J-Dubs. But the Bears defense just looked awful yesterday, right? I get that. But they face Minnesota and Buffalo in the next 2 weeks, and both those defenses have been struggling as of late. Buffalo's banged up. Then they get Detroit, Jacksonville, and Seattle. That's what we really want to look at here. I'm trying not to get too ahead of myself with some of the players in today's video, but ultimately, right, this upcoming schedule for the Jets is extremely favorable, okay? So we can look at the Chicago game and say, oh, that was just Chicago. But we're really going to get a good idea in the next coming weeks of what the Jets are going to offer. And we want to hold on and go grab those pieces of the Jets offense now. Because they get Minnesota, Buffalo, Detroit, Jacksonville, and Seattle to finish the fantasy season. And it looks like Mike White's going to be the quarterback. And what's Mike White going to do? He's going to throw the football. Is Mike White going to play as well as he did yesterday in every single one of these games? I don't know that for sure. But does he have an opportunity against most of these secondaries? Absolutely. Absolutely. So moving back to Elijah Moore, 29% rostered, 14 PPR points in week 12. Like I said, not a crazy game in terms of volume. 2 targets, 2 receptions. That was it. 64 receiving yards and a touchdown. Garrett Wilson went absolutely crazy. But I do think we want to pay attention to what Elijah Moore did in this game because him and Mike White have a little bit of a history going back to last year. They made some really good connections overall when Elijah Moore was on that hot stretch, and we just saw, similar to this season, like 3 or 4 different quarterbacks play for the Jets. So if you remember what Elijah Moore did in his rookie season when he was extremely productive, I don't know if we'll get exactly back to those numbers with how well Garrett Wilson is playing, but ultimately Elijah Moore is definitely worth a look and kind of going under the radar at the moment, especially with the low volume that he had in week 12. So I think Elijah Moore is a smart player to go out and grab right now, put him on your bench and kind of see what happens over the next coming weeks. He could honestly be a league winner when we saw how well he played last season. So I think Elijah Moore is definitely worth the addition as we approach the week because we want to go grab him right now before this Jets offense gets too hot. Is he going to have the same volume and output as a guy like Garrett Wilson? No. But is he worth rostering? 100%. All right, moving on, we got DeAndre Carter for the Chargers. Now, this is a little bit of a tough read because we don't exactly know when my boy Mike Williams is going to be back out there on the field, but we need to give DeAndre Carter some props because it really feels like Josh Palmer has kind of overshadowed Carter's production. And when we look at the last 4 games, right, DeAndre Carter's fantasy stat lines read in full PPR at 10.3, 16.4, 6.3, and 20.3. So career day here in this past week in week 12 against the Arizona Cardinals, 10 targets, 7 receptions, 73 receiving yards, and a touchdown, 20.3 fantasy points. He gets a very favorable matchup in week 13 against the Las Vegas Raiders, a team that just looks like their defense will allow opposing offense to put up as many points as they want. So Chargers had a big victory in week 12. They need to beat the Raiders in week 13. They need to have a big offensive outing once again. So what I was getting at, right, is you got Keenan Allen as the wide receiver 1. You've had Josh Palmer fill in as wide receiver 2 and even wide receiver 1 a lot on the year. But if you go back and you look at some of these Chargers games, it has always felt like Justin Herbert has really wanted to get DeAndre Carter involved and make him part of this offense. And we've kind of slowly seen that happen over the past couple of weeks, where earlier in the season it was kind of more of a struggle, but some of those matchups were a little bit tougher. So with Mike Williams continuing to be kind of banged up with the ankle injury, with the uncertainty of Keenan Allen, who, don't get me wrong, Keenan Allen had a good game, and had a very good game the week before. And Josh Palmer had a good game this past week as well. I just think DeAndre Carter is a player who's definitely just worth rostering because it looks like the Chargers are going to operate, with multiple receivers. Like we already know that, right? And somebody's going to be hurt, somebody's going to be inconsistent. So Carter is just worth rostering as the Chargers continue to make this final stretch and push to make the playoffs, right? And we look at this upcoming schedule, right? Las Vegas in week 13, which we just talked about. They get Miami in week 14. Miami is a tough matchup, but they have allowed for some good offensive game scripts as well throughout the year. Then they get Tennessee, a bad secondary, the Colts and the Rams. So Colts and Rams kind of like, I don't know. I think we need to get a better week as we or a better read, as we approach those weeks. But still a pretty favorable schedule to finish the year. Like, is Carter's upside capped by Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer, and potentially Mike Williams? 100%, and even Austin Eckler for that matter, 100%. But is he worth rostering? Sure. I mean, hey, we're approaching the end of the fantasy season, and ultimately, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel. So DeAndre Carter, worth a look, especially in PPR scoring formats. All right, moving right along, we're going to move on to the tight end position. I got Foster Moreau as my number one tight end to add. He was on last week's waiver wire video. He was pretty high on the tight end rankings as well, just a solid streaming option. But we know that Seattle is one of the worst teams in the league. They've been battling the Cardinals for the worst team in the league throughout the season against the tight end position. So he's a really good, waiver wire play going into the week. 46% rostered at the moment, 12.3 PPR points in week 12, and he gets the Chargers in week 13, who are in like the bottom 8 against the tight end position so far on the season. So Foster Moreau, another solid streaming option if you're struggling at the tight end position. We've had so many injuries to the tight end position that I know a handful of you guys out there are just juggling different tight ends, trying to get the most possible points on a weekly basis. So Foster Moreau, another solid streaming option and a good competitive game script against the Chargers. A really important game for both of these teams. If the Raiders want any continued life on the season, they have to win this game. This is an important game for the Chargers to continue for a playoff push. So Foster Moreau, a good addition as we approach the week. All right, let's move on to Tyler Conklin, sticking with the tight end position. I think that he's worth the addition once again because, like we just talked about with Elijah Moore, we want to pick up pieces of this Jets offense. I know in a lot of leagues, like if you looked around, like going into week 12, people were already doing this. Like Elijah Moore got picked up. Tyler Conklin got picked up in a lot of leagues, and even Corey Davis got picked up in a lot of leagues as well. And that was smart because Mike White allows this Jets team to throw the football. And Tyler Conklin at the beginning of the season was like a top 5 tight end. He still comes in as tight end 13 on the season, but a really bad stretch there with Zach Wilson at the quarterback position, just not the same chemistry. So let's look at what Conklin did with Mike White at the quarterback position. 3 targets, 3 receptions, 50 receiving yards, 8 fantasy points. Nothing crazy here, but once again, grab these pieces of the Jets offense while you can. Am I saying all these guys are going to be absolute studs? No. But do they all have fantasy value? Yes. And just the fact that we're approaching week 13 of the season and the regular season for fantasy is wrapping up and we're making the playoff push, and we have the Jets offense coming alive and giving us multiple options is a really good thing, right? For those of you making a playoff push, for those of you fighting for the toilet bowl championship, and for those of you fighting for a regular fantasy football championship, which I hope you are over the toilet bowl, this is a good thing, right? We have an offense coming to life, and I think that overall Tyler Conklin is worth the addition with how many injuries we've seen to the tight end position at the end of the day. All right, let's look at some streaming quarterback options. All right, Jared Goff continues to be a quarterback we can stream on a weekly basis against the right defenses, okay? Depending on your scoring format, he had about 17.5 to 20 fantasy points in week 12 on Thanksgiving Day against the Buffalo Bills. And he gets the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 13. So gets another struggling defense. And he gets the Minnesota Vikings in week 14, who've been struggling overall as well. So 2 good matchups coming up for Jared Goff. He's definitely a quarterback we can just continue to stream to get a safe floor out of on most weeks. He gets the Jets in week 15. I don't like that matchup as well. Then he gets Carolina, who looked pretty good yesterday, then Chicago in the fantasy championship. So ultimately, if you're wanting a QB2 to hold on to, Jared Goff is probably worth it at this point in the season. I mean, he's your quarterback 19. He started the season, in the first 4 weeks looking like a top 8, 9, 10 quarterback and really fell off in the middle of the season. But I do think he holds enough stability. And let's face it, the Lions have looked a little bit improved overall as well. Plus, they get J-Mo coming back. So, all right, Trevor Lawrence is your quarterback 10 so far on the season. I was a little bit worried at the beginning of this game. I actually had to start Trevor Lawrence in a league where I own Justin Fields. And it looked like Lawrence was going to have like 9 fantasy points if we were lucky. But turned the Jets on. This offense got it clicking. This game became very competitive. It was a great game. I mean, it was a fantastic finish to that game. I thought Justin Tucker was going to win it, but nonetheless, 321 passing yards for Lawrence, 3 touchdowns, and that was about it. But nonetheless, a very good day for Trevor Lawrence. He gets the Detroit Lions in Week 13 and the Tennessee Titans in Week 14. Both those teams have holes on their defense. The Titans very, very stout against the run, very stout in terms of a pass rush, but that secondary really struggles. So he is your quarterback 10 right now in fantasy. He's rostered in 56% of leagues. So he's the less likely option out of the 3 to be available, but definitely is worth a look as we approach the week. All right. Next up, I got to put Mike White on here. Like, I don't even know if Mike White is really worth adding, but I think he is. I really do. He gets Minnesota in Week 13. 24.8 fantasy points against the Chicago Bears in Week 12, 315 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. We talked a lot about this schedule. What I was trying to hold in here is that, like, Mike White might be a real option as we approach the end of the season. We already talked about the schedule, like I said. So Minnesota, Buffalo, Detroit, Jacksonville, Seattle to finish out the season. It's absolutely beautiful. It's a really, really, really solid strength of schedule for the Jets, for the passing attack that we're going to hope they have to finish out the season. I mean, we know that this defense, like if the offense can get it done, man, this defense is going to allow this team to make a playoff push. It's an extremely competitive division right now. But if this offense can make this passing attack what we think it can be, and Michael Carter can get healthy and the rest of the running backs we already talked about earlier today can help kind of polish out the backfield, this is going to be a playoff team. So a lot of good competitive game scripts against bad defenses coming up. Minnesota, Buffalo, Detroit, Jacksonville, Seattle. And even if you play through Week 18, they get Miami. So, yeah, I think Mike White might actually be more than a streaming quarterback. We're going to have to see. But those are your streaming quarterbacks I got for you guys. Jared Goff, T-Law, and Mike White, all favorable matchups as we approach Week 13. All right, very quickly here, let's take a look at the best of the rest. Not players I'm going to necessarily break down completely, but Donovan Peoples-Jones, I told you guys, I mean, like, he deserves a slide, but I told you guys last week, I'm not talking about Donovan Peoples-Jones anymore. I talked about him every single week since, like, Week 4 of the season. He's made the waiver wire video, and I continue to love DPJ. He had a bad week in Week 12. Not the best. I mean, the weather didn't turn out as bad as we thought it was going to be, but just not, I don't know. He didn't get it done in Week 12. I get it. His first, like, I mean, seriously, since Week 4, he's had 9 or more fantasy points every single week of the season. So I'm not going to hold up DPJ for too bad of a week. He gets Deshaun Watson at the quarterback position. As we approach the week, they get Houston, Cincinnati, Baltimore, New Orleans, and Washington to finish out the season. Houston and Cincinnati, not the best matchups, but ultimately DPJ just deserves to be rostered. Still sits at like 60% rostered. And even though I told you guys I wasn't going to talk about him, we're still talking about him. All right. Van Jefferson scares me, okay? But he's worth a roster spot. He really operated as the Rams' #1 receiver as we went into the week. They get Seattle in Week 13, so not as good of a matchup as they had in Week 12 against the Kansas City Chiefs, but nonetheless, Allen Robinson is out for the season. He's going to need surgery. So Jefferson is basically your wide receiver 1 at the moment. 11.9 fantasy points in Week 12, 7 targets, 3 receptions, 29 receiving yards, and a touchdown. So you take away the touchdown, it's not that good of a fantasy stat line, but if you look at the last 3 weeks, he has 11 or more fantasy points in 2 of those matchups and 2 touchdowns in 2 of his last 3 matchups. So Jefferson is worth taking a look at. Do I love this offense? No. No. Seattle's actually played pretty well against opposing receivers. But they get Vegas the next coming week. It's tough, but take a look at Jefferson if you're desperate, I guess. All right, DJ Chark gets our next read. I forgot who brought up DJ Chark on Saturday's live stream going into Week 12, but it was no, it wasn't. It was Thursday. That's right. It was Thursday morning before the Thanksgiving games. But he had 9.6 fantasy points, a touchdown, 16 receiving yards, 5 targets, 2 receptions. A good upcoming schedule for DJ Chark. Jacksonville and Minnesota in the next 2 weeks. So Chark is definitely worth a look. But we get J-Mo back for this offense pretty soon too. So I don't know. Still a lot of spread targets there in that offense, but Chark is worth a look, absolutely. All right. Mac Hollins, is he a receiver you can trust on a weekly basis? No. But we do have to look at let's look at the last 5 weeks, right? 11 or more fantasy points, or no, in the last 6 weeks. 11 or more fantasy points in 4 of his last 6 matchups, okay? The other 2 matchups, he had 3.8 or less fantasy points. So not very encouraging. Like, he's still a boom or bust player, but is he someone you can throw in the flex and cross your fingers? Absolutely. 16.3 fantasy points in Week 12 against Seattle, 5 targets, 4 receptions, 63 receiving yards, and a touchdown. He gets the Chargers in Week 13, the Rams, New England, Pittsburgh, and then San Francisco. So not the most favorable schedule. But like I said, can you throw him in your flex and cross your fingers? Absolutely. 100%. And he's essentially a wide receiver too on that team, with Hunter Renfrow out and Waller out. So Richie James Jr., the last receiver I want to talk about. I actually think Richie James Jr., who's just 3% rostered, is probably a player who deserved a slide today, who should be rostered in more leagues, right? Because, the Giants lost in Week 12, but they're still a team that is fighting for, the playoffs. It's still a very relevant team, has a good run attack, has a defense that's played pretty well. And listen, like, we've loved big play Slay. We've loved Darius Slayton throughout the season. Since Week 5, right? We kind of saw the emergence of Slayton and Randall Robinson. That's really the point I'm getting at, is we liked Randall Robinson, even though he had some down weeks, and he's out. And really the receiver who's come on and taken the place of Randall Robinson is Richie James. And if we look at the last 2 weeks, since Randall's been hurt, 13.8 points in Week 11 against Detroit, a touchdown, 48 receiving yards. Week 12, 15.1 fantasy points, 41 receiving yards, and a touchdown. So he gets Washington in Week 13. They've done some good things defensively in the last 2 weeks or so. They've done some bad things. Their secondary is not good. Then they get Philadelphia, it's a tough matchup. Then they get Washington, Minnesota. Then they get a tough matchup against the Colts for the receiver position. But ultimately, there's enough favorable matchups here for Richie James Jr., and he should see enough volume overall that he's worth adding, in my opinion. So I think he's kind of the last, I think he's a sleeper to kind of finish out this stream, or finish out this part of the stream. So I think that Richie James definitely worth the addition. All right. So let's find a good slide to leave up here. That does it, guys. But let's just leave it to Michael Hasty. I can kind of flip through the slides. But there we go. There's your Week 13 waiver wire ads. I'm just going to roll to the bottom of the chat and see what's going on with you guys. And I appreciate you guys being here, man. Smash that like button if you guys haven't done so already. I appreciate you guys coming out for a little morning stream. Let me get a drink of water. All right, guys. So let me know in the chat, how did Week 12 go for you guys? Did you guys win? Did you guys lose? I'm going to be like 2-2 on the week. All right, that took about half an hour, so not too bad. Appreciate you guys coming out, man. All right, let's see. What beach did you go to? It is cold. It's cold. We are at Sandbridge at Virginia Beach. So it's cold, but we went out this morning, and it was pretty nice, actually. We went out this morning. It was pretty good. The sun was out. It was pretty nice. Yesterday was like cold and rainy. We took the baby out for a little bit. But it's not raining today. It's good. We're going to go to the aquarium in a little bit here. So J-Dub's finishing 2-3 on the week. Let's go. Prey, I'm up 52 points. My opponent has JT and Steelers defense left. You should be good. Could get close, but you should be good. All right, let's see here, Zach. What you got? Tired of Gabe Davis? Should I make a move for Debo or Scary Terry? All of them are meh, but Gabe Davis is by far the worst. I would go for Scary Terry here because I feel like he's a little bit more attainable, and at the end of the day, I think he brings a little bit more consistency. Like if you want to go for Debo, that's completely fine. But the injury to Debo kind of concerning. I mean, basically lost me a matchup this week. I don't want to say that for sure. But I mean, I know Terry's volume, well, not really his volume, but his output's been a little bit lower the last 2 weeks, 9.6 or less fantasy points in the last 2 games. I thought he was going to have a much better day against the Atlanta Falcons. Against the Giants in week 13, then a bye week. Just keep in mind, if you do go Terry, a bye week in week 14, the Giants, San Francisco, Cleveland, really not the best strength of schedule to finish out the year. So if you want to take a look at Debo, I'm not completely against it, man. But yeah, if you want to move on from Gabe Davis and kind of get away from that boomer bust inconsistency, I think that's fine. Debo has a much, much more favorable matchup or strength of schedule, I should say. Miami, Tampa Bay, Seattle, Washington, Las Vegas to finish out the year. So if you do go Debo, I think that's completely fine, man. But yeah, I get it. I get having those kind of boomer bust players can definitely be frustrating, man. Gabe Davis looked like he was going to hurt me in one of my leagues. I luckily pulled it out in that league. But yeah, I get it, man. All right, Andrew, what's going on? I need 26 points from Pittman. Definitely possible. A very solid matchup tonight for Pittman. So I actually think it's possible. But it'd be like a season high for him if I'm not mistaken. But it's possible, Andrew. Good matchup for him. Derek, I beat Jerry, so it went great for me. Also, my work league starting Mike White. Ooh, let's go, bro. I love it. I love it. I want to talk about the Broncos, or not the Broncos, the Bears quarterback situation too. We got like an announcement that Nathan Peterman was going to start, and I was like, oh my goodness, I have the Jets defense in 2 leagues. And then I turn on the game, and freaking Trevor Simeon is rolling out there. So I also made a parlay based on that, and I actually still hit. The only Bears player on that parlay I didn't hit was David Montgomery. I took the under on his rushing and receiving totals, and he had a really good game actually. But I took the under on Darnell Mooney receiving yards, and then the under on Cole Kmet fantasy points, and both of those hit. But nonetheless, I still lost the parlay. So, but let's go, Derek. All right, Richie, what's up, bro? What's going on with Kamara and Mike Evans? Yeah, I mean, this is kind of you get like a point where sometimes you have these veteran players, and we talked about both these players going into the week, and we didn't actually love them. But the reason I didn't like Mike Evans that much was because of the weather potentially being bad, and the weather didn't turn out to be that bad. And then Kamara, on the other hand, we knew he had a tough matchup. So, but he did have 2 fumbles in this game, so it wasn't a great outing. He gets Tampa Bay in week 13. I'd be very leery of Alvin Kamara in week 13. Then he gets a bye week in week 14. So it's tough there. But I would hold on. I mean, you can't really do anything with Alvin Kamara at this point. In most of your leagues, you can't trade. But he gets Atlanta and Cleveland in weeks 15 and 16. Very good matchups there. Very, very good matchups. So I would hold on to him. In terms of Mike Evans, I mean, it was a down week. It was a bad week. 2 passes, out of 9 targets. That's the thing. The volume has been crazy for Mike Evans. It was just a bad game. There's no ifs. I mean, it's just a bad game. Gets New Orleans in week 13. Gets the Marshawn Lattimore revenge game, rivalry game. We'll see what happens. San Francisco's a tough matchup. Cincinnati's actually a pretty tough matchup. He gets Arizona and Carolina. I mean, you're basically probably going to want to look at matchups here, but I get it, man. Definitely tough and frustrating to play with both those guys right now. Kamara was sick. Oh, I didn't even see that. Dropping Sutton, that's completely fine. Completely fine. Pray, my team is so stacked, I don't really need to watch. Just want to tune in. Okay. Okay, Pray. Your team is looking pretty good, though. The dream is dead. Goodbye, Sutton. Kevin, have Kamara still back-to-back week high unless any kicker gets 16 plus. We think he gets there. 16 plus, I don't know if he gets there. It's possible. possible, but I don't know. All right, we got Bully McGuire. What's good, bro? Oh, hold on. Missed your first comment. What did y'all think of Hollywood yesterday? I thought he looked good for being on a snap count. He did look good. It's a good point. Hopefully Hollywood gets more and more targets, and the only good thing about my Hawks yesterday was they're starting to use DK a lot. Finally looks like Pete has no brain cells sometimes. Yeah, so starting with Hollywood Brown, I told you guys just be a little cautious if you do start him, right? Because we're probably not going to get the full volume, right? It's a good matchup. Should be a good game script here. Should be a competitive game. Should be some scoring in this game. But be cautious with Hollywood Brown. But 10.6 fantasy points, 8 targets, 6 receptions, 46 receiving yards. And the good news here for Hollywood Brown is that he gets a bye week in week 13. Gets more time to rest up. But we look at these next 2 weeks for the Cardinals, very tough matchups. Very tough matchups. New England in week 14, they looked bad this past week, but they're still a solid defense. Then they get the Denver Broncos, who are very, very good against the wide receiver position. So 2 tough matchups coming up for D-Hop and Hollywood Brown, but you probably just have to start them due to volume, right? Then they get Tampa Bay, not the best, not the worst matchup. Then they do get Atlanta in week 17, a beautiful matchup for the fantasy championship. So I've had a lot of faith in Hollywood Brown earlier in the season. He's been a player that, like, we got a lot of trade questions about early in the season. I really encourage you guys to continue playing him and holding on to him. And he didn't disappoint until he got hurt. So nothing you can do about that, right? But yeah, good point there, man. I like seeing him come back to action. All right. We got all the East Coast folks. Yeah, I guess this is like the earliest I've ever streamed, dude. I got up really early today. Is DJ Moore back with Darnold starting quarterback? That is another good point to bring up. What's up, Santos? Good to see you. Yeah. So we saw some dimes out there by Sam Darnold. I mean, just slinging that thing. And what do the Panthers have to lose, right? Like, what does Sam Darnold have to lose? Why wouldn't he be slinging it? So 20.3 fantasy points. It's like the second reemergence. We had the PJ Walker, DJ Moore connection, emergence week 7 and 8 against Tampa Bay and Atlanta for DJ Moore. Now we have our second emergence of DJ Moore here in week 12, going into week 13, where he's on bye week. So really going into week 14 for DJ Moore. 20.3 fantasy points against the Denver Broncos, a tough matchup. 4 receptions off 6 targets, 103 receiving yards, and a touchdown for DJ Moore. So, yeah, is DJ Moore a player you can continue to start? Probably. He gets Seattle. I don't want to undermine how well they've been playing against the receiver position in week 14, but we saw yesterday they will give up some points. So I don't hate him in week 14. Gets Pittsburgh, a favorable matchup in week 15. Gets Detroit, a pretty favorable matchup in week 16. Tampa Bay in week 17. So, yeah, DJ Moore, a player we can definitely consider as we start to wrap up the season. All right, let's see. Smokey, what's good, bro? Good morning, good morning. Great to have you here, bro. Christian Watson did go crazy. Yep. Yeah, I mean, it does kind of feel like Rodgers is gaining that trust in Watson. Like, he had I don't want to say a drop, but an incomplete pass pretty early in the game. And Rodgers continued to go back to Christian Watson, and then obviously we saw some Jordan Love in this game too. So they had a good connection right on that 63-yard touchdown. So it's kind of, we have a weird place for the Packers right now, but they get the Chicago Bears. He just got absolutely torched by the Jets in week 13. So I think Watson, who I don't want to say I was leery of going into week 12, but I just warned you guys, like, he's got to score. Like, he brings a ton of upside, but he also brings some risk against a good Philadelphia Eagles team. So just keep that in mind. If you do start him in week 12, I like him more in the flex, and he showed up for you guys, right? 21 fantasy points. So in the last 3 weeks, he has 21 or more fantasy points in every game. So against the Chicago Bears in week 13, Christian Watson's going to be a player we definitely start as we approach the week. All right, let's see. Let's see. Lost my place in the chat. Appreciate you guys being here, man. Thank you guys for hanging out. We'll probably wrap things up in the next 10 or 15 minutes, but I appreciate you guys being here. I'll probably hop on tonight after the game as well. I started White over him. I'm not mad at it. Rashad White, just a disappointing week, man. I was like, and he started the game so well. He had that huge run. I was like, all right, let's go. Great call on Rashad. I mean, full PPR, he didn't have that bad of a game, right? I still felt like it was disappointing, but he had the 9 targets, 9 receptions, finished with 19.9 fantasy points. But I just expected a little bit more out of Rashad White. But still, I mean, 4.5 yards per carry, 64 yards on the ground off 14 touches, and then the 9 receptions for 45 receiving yards. Even in the standard scoring format, that got you double digits. But I expected more out of Rashad White. AJ Brown was sick as well. I guess that means when you're sick, you're at risk of fumbling. Yeah, Brown, just another week where I want to say he feels like, I mean, he's taken a lot of different defensive pressure off of this team. But he's still 12.6 fantasy points. Yeah, he fumbled, still scored a touchdown, right? But I think he plays Tennessee in week 13. I'd be scared to go up against AJ Brown, being that he's playing his former team. I think he's going to be a great start coming into the week. Should I feel okay about Aaron Jones if Rodgers gets shut down? Yes. Aaron Jones is still a player that we can start on a regular basis for sure. Volume's going to be too high. I mean, listen, like we saw some output for AJ Dillon in this matchup as well, which was nice to see, but not nice for Aaron Jones owners. But yeah, Jones 18.9 fantasy points. Listen, anything is game. Like, sorry once again, J-Dubs, but against the Bears this coming week, anything's game. I mean, A.J. Dillon at 17.8 fantasy points, 8 touches on the ground, 4 targets. Aaron Jones still out-touched him, 12 touches on the ground, 4 targets. So, I mean, listen, both these players come out of week 13 with double digits, regardless of if we see Jones or Jordan Love at quarterback. But I personally think it'll be A-Rod. All right. Butterfingers. Sorry, I'm having trouble navigating the chat. All right, let's see. Michael Carter, a drop note with injury in the RBs, kind of taking hot hand approach. No, I would hold on to Michael Carter. I would not drop him. I would not drop him. I think he'll be, if he's healthy, I still think he's the guy, man. Yeah, it's a good point, Andrea. And I see J-Dubs bringing it up as well. I did not like Dameon Pierce going into the week. And I accidentally started him over Samaje Perine, which lost me a matchup in the Catch family. Well, I still have a chance if Najee Harris has a pretty big game. But, yeah, you know, I told a lot of you guys, a lot of starter sit questions this week about Dameon Pierce. Should we start him? Should we sit him? It was a sit like 99% of the time, unless I saw a really bad option, you know. But, yeah, we knew we had Kyle Allen at quarterback. We knew Miami was going to have a field day. Just did not feel like a good game script for the Texans. Did not feel like a game script where they were going to be running the football. He does get the Cleveland Browns in Week 13. Do I think he has a better opportunity in Week 13? Yeah. Would I still be scared to start him? Probably. But I do think Pierce has a chance to bounce back. But it was just an awful game script. And I mean, let's face it. Like, I feel like the Texans were basically saying, like, you guys, you know, are arguing against Davis Mills. Well, this is our other option. It did not go well. What do you think of Deshaun Watson when he's back? I have Dak, but I picked up Deshaun. I think that's fine, but I would continue to play Dak. Like, let's see what happens with Watson first. And I also think, right, the Texans-Browns game, I think the Browns are going to run the football a ton. I think they're going to do whatever. I mean, we talked about this a little bit the last couple of weeks. I think the Browns are going to run the football a ton because the Texans cannot defend the run. And you got Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt for that matter. But, like, this is going to be a very basically a controversial game between the Browns and the Texans at the end of the day for a lot of different reasons, right? And the Browns, led by Deshaun Watson, are going to want to win this football game. I think Watson will get some good play actions in there, try and warm up for the season, so to speak. But at the end of the day, he's going to be led by the run game. So I don't actually think he has that high of a ceiling against the Texans, who I know just got absolutely torched, but on the season have played pretty decently against the receiver and quarterback position. So, and part of that is because they get so torched on the ground game that receivers and quarterbacks don't need to do as much. Don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, I don't think that I see a crazy high ceiling for Watson in week 13 against the Browns. Call me crazy. I just think you throw Nick Chubb in this game, you let him run all over that team. But yeah, he's worth holding on to. But I would play Dak until you see a ton of production. So after the first quarter, Herbert had me worried and coming through. Yeah, Herbert, a really nice performance to finish that game. Both from a fantasy perspective and from a real life perspective as well. Just a great game for the Chargers. Nice 2-point conversion. Just a good game for the Chargers, man. They needed that win. I mean, just in terms of confidence for the team. Probably have the Niners defense, so I'm going to need a new defense. Well, let me know who's available. And Stevens must-start defenses should drop today as well. Yeah, I would hold off on Deshaun initially, too. All right, let's see. Need 30 points out of Pickens. I mean, anything's possible, man. Let's go, George Pickens. J-Dubs, I'll probably post a parlay. I might be running it through Price Picks, but I'll probably post a parlay on Discord later for you guys and Instagram. So I feel good about Bills' defense rest of the season with the Von Miller injury. I mean, that defense has been struggling, man. They've been getting really banged up. They got to get healthy for the playoffs, man. I think that they will probably start to allow some of those players to get healthy, but I don't know. That division's so close, man. Your defense 7. They get New England, the Jets, Miami, Chicago, Cincinnati. They have some good matchups there. They have some bad matchups. You might want to take a look at streaming a couple players. A couple defenses, I should say. I'm up 5. My opponent is Pittman. I have JT and Najee. If I lose somehow, I'm going to break my phone. You can definitely have a good shot there. That might be close, though. Might be close. Think I got to play Deshaun over Brady next week. He always stinks against the Saints. He had a good game against the Saints last. He usually has one really bad game, one good game against the Saints a year, actually. But it's always like gritty and gross if he does get it done. So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind, Kevin. Santos, thanks for the help. Got a big win. Still have some playoff hopes and still got JT tonight. So try and earn the best ball win. Let's go, baby. Let's go. I was thinking about the Browns, Bucks, or Vikings defense for picking up. The Browns might be a good call next week with the way the Texans looked this past week. So I would consider the Browns. Let's see. Steven just sent me. Here's a sneak peek. He just sent me his defenses for the week. He's got the Ravens, the Bucks, the Commanders, the Saints, the Browns, the Seahawks, the Lions for his streaming options. He did mention to me it's a bad week for streaming options defensively. So you got 2 of them on there, bro. All right, guys, I'm going to start wrapping things up here. I got a couple things to do. Then I'm at the beach, bro. I'm at the beach. But thank you guys so much for coming out today. Thank you guys for hanging out. And thank you guys for coming out to the Waiver Wire stream. I know this was a little bit different. Quality isn't as good. I don't have my PC with me. I've got 2 laptops. And I know this isn't how we normally run the Waiver Wire video. But I appreciate you guys hanging out and showing support and going through the Waiver Wire ads with me, man. So I'll go through very quickly one last time here. We got JaMychal Hasty, the Jets backfield, including Zonovan Knight, Kyron Williams, a lot of favorable matchups for the Rams backfield coming up. Gus the Bus himself might be available in your league and look like the primary back for the Ravens, but I always have trust issues with this backfield. Zay Jones looked very good this past week. Favorable matchups coming up there. Elijah Moore, go get pieces of this Jets offense while you can. DeAndre Carter, just a player who deserves some props, who continues to make the most out of his opportunities within this offense. And there's always somebody injured at the receiver position, it feels like, for the Chargers. Foster Moreau, a very solid week. A really good matchup in week 12, but another good matchup in week 13. Worth rostering, which should be a good competitive game script. Tyler Conklin, go get pieces of this Jets offense. Enough said. Jared Goff, Trevor Lawrence, Mike White, all favorable matchups, all streaming options at the quarterback position as we approach week 13. And your best of the rest, we had Donovan Peoples-Jones, Van Jefferson, DJ Chark, Mac Hollins, and Richie James. So there's a little wrap up of the waiver wire video. Guys, hit me up on Discord if you guys need anything. Hit me up on Instagram if you guys need anything. I'll get back to you when I can. Must start defenses will be dropping later today for week 13, and I will try and hop on after tonight's game as well. This is kind of how this week is going to go. I am probably just going to run streams for different positions early on in the day and then stream in the evening for fantasy Q&A. When I do my streams earlier on in the day, whether it's wide receiver rankings, running back rankings, whatever it is, I'll take like 20 or 30 minutes to do some fantasy Q&A at the end of the stream as well, and then I'll do a longer fantasy Q&A at nighttime. Might take one night off or something throughout the night, or throughout the week, but just want to. I'll keep you guys updated on Discord because it's going to be a crazy week for the channel while I'm here at the beach. But I am definitely going to have content for you guys every single day and a live stream, like basically every single day of the week as well. So thank you guys so much for coming out, man. Hit that like button on the way out. Hit that subscribe button. Of course, if you're new to the channel, make sure to join Discord and Instagram. Links are in the description down below. And that'll do it for today. So I appreciate you guys, man. Appreciate you guys hanging out for the waiver wire stream and for bringing some good fantasy conversation into the chat as well. So love you guys, man. Everyone have a great day. Love this community, man. Love the Catch fam. And I'll talk to you guys a little bit later on today. So I don't know what that says. I'll talk to you guys later. So everyone have a great start to the week, man. Hope you guys won week 12, and let's get ready to smash week 13 as well. So with that, I'll say thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on the Catch. And peace.